What is up, humans on the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got another top 5 video. We're going through the different types of decks and talking about what of those kinds of decks are underrated right now, and especially with new products coming out very recently, and also right on the horizon we get like Burst of Destiny this week. Very exciting. It's going to be one of the most impactful sets we've gotten in a long time. And I don't know, also just kind of looking down the line a little bit, because there are some things that are kind of interesting that you could add to this list. But for today, we're doing top 5 control decks that are underrated right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! We're not all necessarily talking about like, oh, this is tier 1, but nobody knows it. Oh, this is like really good. Even some underlying ones that like maybe not tier 1 or tier 2, but even like on the rogue level, people don't respect. They think it's like literal garbage, and it's actually not. They're kind of interesting. So that leads us to where we start off here. And of course, that would be the Facecard deck. This deck kind of surprised me. I'm not going to lie. When I was reading through these cards, you know, when they first got released and everything, I thought they were really underwhelming. I thought their restrictions were a little bit too brutal. They wouldn't have been bad, like horrible, if they didn't have some of those restrictions, but I thought they were too much. But you know what? Apparently Slifer's just good. Like, unironically, Slifer's just good, I guess. So there's a good amount of just consistency cards in the deck, and the recurability is insane. That's the one thing in this deck that's like kind of crazy, is like everything in the deck like adds itself back. It's kind of crazy. So of course you have like Joker's nice addition to the monster lineup for the Facecard deck, and then you have Slifer. Like, I didn't respect Slifer as much as I should have. I knew what it did, but I don't know. It's one of those things where you just like reduce your opponent's monster by 2,000 attack on summon. Then if the monster's attack is then hits 0, it's just destroyed. And it's kind of like a floodgate. It's kind of crazy, and some decks don't realize it. They just can't even play through it because of the way their deck works. Like, everything they summon is just like tiny, so just like pop doesn't work. You can't really get anywhere. It's kind of crazy. And then of course all the spells as well, like all the spells and traps do the same thing, where they like come back, and you have a couple of interruptive. I think there's one of them that's an interruption card, but the other ones kind of just help you facilitate continuous like Slifer plays, which is not bad at all. And this one's one of them. It gets you like a 1 card setup for all 3 nights without, or 1.5 cards. You have to discard a card without using your normal summon, which is, I mean, it's solid. It just is. So very cool. I don't think this deck is like tier 1 or tier 2 and people don't know it. I just think this is one of those decks where once I looked back on it a couple months later, I was like, dang, these cards actually do some things. I saw like a couple of people at my locals playing it, and I was like, respect. The deck actually does more than I thought it did. So very cool. Moving on to I guess we'll do number 4. We'll start from 5 and work our way in. These are in no particular order, by the way. They're just 5 decks that I think are underrated. Next up is Trap Tricks. And I think Trap Tricks at this point has a little more recognition. I just don't think it's as high as it could be. I think this deck could legit be considered like a tier 2 deck almost always. Just nobody wants to consider it that. People know Trap Tricks as like this, oh, set 4, set 5, make a Sarah and pass kind of deck, but it's not even necessarily like that anymore. A lot of the builds are playing like extenders, so you're ending on like rank 4s, like good rank 4s, like Rafflesia, like Dweller, like whatever, you know what I mean, whatever you think is good in a matchup disruption wise, and it's actually decent. It's not a one facet deck, right? You're not just losing to Lightning Storm, losing to Harpy's Feather Duster. Sometimes they hurt, but you don't just outright lose to it like you may have done in the past. And I really like that about the deck. It's still a very good control deck, does some weird combo things. Sarah's just insane. The amount of value Sarah generates is ridiculous over the course of like 2 or 3 turns. You have insane trap holes. Gravediggers is still really good, right? Just negating any monster effect in hand, grave, or banish. It's just good. That's just so good. It really, and burning for 2,000, making your like OTK threshold like so much smaller on the next turn. Very good. And then of course you have like extenders. Like I said, the deck is pivoted into a route where you're playing Shade Brigandines, you're playing Parallel Exceeds, you're playing stuff like that to get to the rank 4s and get to more offensive stuff rather than just setting 4. That's not really what the deck wants to do anymore. You probably don't even play 20 trap cards now in the deck. Well, it might be close, but like it's probably not as high as you might think originally when you were thinking about Trap Trick. So very good deck, very underrated. I think this deck could legit be almost considered tier 2 if it's in the hands of a right pilot. I just don't think enough players play it. Not enough players recognize it as such, but it is a very good deck. So Trap Trick's number 4. Moving on here, we have Magistus. Now this one's really cool because this is one of the archetypes I put on here because we're getting a new support card in the new set Burst of Destiny, and that would be the new Synchro. But starting off with what the archetype already does, the deck kind of felt weird. It was one of those decks where like for 2021, or well, I guess this came out in 2020, we don't really get a lot of archetypes like this anymore, but it's one of those archetypes where the engine felt decent. We just didn't, there was like no win condition. And I get it, like we had Dogmatica, we have Invoked, we have like spellbook packages, like there were things that could be thrown in here to kind of like help make it work. But it itself didn't really have a win condition. It had spell and trap removal, it had OK monster removal, had a searchability. It just didn't have a win condition. And now we finally get that in the form of this boy right here. This card is an insane floodgate. Pretty much what he says is he's like a walking skill drain for any type of monster that's equipped to him. So you can't, he doesn't negate main deck monsters, but you can equip links, fusions, synchros, or exceeds to him, and he will negate any of that type should they ever hit the field. That's pretty good. So, I mean, there are definitely decks that can work around him, but ideally he's not the only interruption you're ending on in most turns. Or you play like a control strategy where you end on him and like it was only like a 2-card investment. Usually a 2-card combo to make him has a follow-up in hand and like obviously only 2-card investment. So 3 other cards in hand. If you're playing hand traps, you're playing traps, boom, add that to it. If you're playing Dogmatica stuff, I think fits pretty well with this archetype. Also ending on, you know, a punishment with him is really good because even if they threaten to just make something big enough to walk over him, you might just have the punishment anyway. So they put all their resources into trying to out him. He comes back to the field pretty early or pretty easily, and you might have follow-up anyway in hand. So very, very easy. And I think it's actually a decent control strategy. Now I will say going second, the deck still seems to struggle. Doesn't really have an incredible option going second at this point. And I do still think the deck could use 1 or 2 new like pieces that like they don't have yet. But I do think that could be down the line. I think we've got 2 synchros, 2 exceeds, but only 1 link and only 1 fusion. So we could easily see like the second, you know, monsters for those, and maybe that would be what the deck needed to fully round out and actually be a really complete deck. But I do think for right now, especially combined with like Dogmatica stuff, really solid control deck. I cannot wait to try this out once this card drops. This is one of the decks I'm really excited to try post Burst of Destiny. So very, very cool. Magistus there. Oh, also the deck can do Bahamut Toad plays. They have like a water in the deck, and they also have a monster extender that summons itself, and it's a level 4, and it could just change its attribute. So change it to water, make a Bahamut Toad play. That also adds more follow-up because the Toad will add back the Endymion guy if it once it uses its negate, and you still have Bahamut on field potentially. Maybe make a Zeus or save it for next turn to make another Toad. Pretty cool, right? There's some cool things the deck can do for sure. Moving to number 2, we've got Live Twins. You probably could have guessed this was going to be on here, and I'm not even sure this is underrated at this point, but it is a deck that is getting support in the next week, and this card is huge. I mean, as far as archetypes we talk about where they get 1 card, it's a huge buff. This is definitely one of them. We've been looking at this deck for a while, and we're like, Konami seems to really want to push this archetype. They get a new card in like every set. And their engine seems nice, they just didn't really have enough payoff, kind of similar to Magistus. Like the engine's there, they just didn't have a boss monster to really apply pressure with, and they finally get that in the form of Trouble Sunny. This card's crazy. It like quick effect tags out for like both of the links, and so you summon both the links, you get a pop, you get a draw, and it's actually like a pretty damn good removal card in the graveyard. So I am a big fan of this card. I think this card takes them to the next level. I think they're probably either top level rogue or tier 2 with this stuff. You also can potentially combine the archetype with something like Eldritch, just because like they're one card combos a lot of the time. Eldritch is just kind of chilling. They have a discard card that like summons one of them straight out of the deck. So obviously you pitch an Eldritch card, you get that value back anyway. There's some good synergy in there for sure. So because of that, I think this archetype definitely needs to be kind of kept in the forefront of your mind. The plays are super repeatable. The deck feels like it's coming back at you every turn, so it can be kind of tough to like hold them at bay. They have a lot of extenders. Deck is surprisingly potent now. I just say that. They also have, with this new spell, this like their deck was already consistent. Now this card just took it to the next level because this can add any live twin monster. So the card that only searches spells and traps now also searches monsters. This card also searches monsters. They have good like solid extenders now you can search off of this. It really feels like everything can search everything, and you almost always have access to like something to let you play through some interruption, which is very important. It definitely is. So that's number 2. Live twins, definitely keep them in the forefront of your mind, because you might be seeing them a little bit more often post Burst of Destiny. Which takes us to our final deck of this video of the control decks for 2021, and you probably could have guessed it if you've been paying attention to the channel for the last couple of months. It's Zephrys. It has to be Zephrys for me. I still cannot believe how surprised people have been when I've gone to locals, and I've probably taken this to like 10 locals now, and I switch decks up fairly often, but when I was taking it, the amount of people that are just like crazy surprised that Zephrys are like not only there, but like I'll be 3-1, 4-0 through 4 rounds, and people are like surprised that I'm playing Zephyr at like table 1 at locals, and I'm like, guys, I'm just telling you, like, the deck's good. It's not like, oh, he found like a chink in the armor of the meta and this is the one weakness. Like, the deck just has tools, and it feels like there's very few bad matchups, pretty much. Like, that's just what it is. Like, Zeus is probably like any deck that can make Zeus super, super easy is the only threat to this deck. But outside of Zodiac, I don't know if there's another deck that really makes Zeus that easy that really scares this deck away. But it has insane tools. Obviously, taking advantage of stuff like Path, like half the decks in the game just literally can't do anything under this. And then like 35% of the decks in the game just like can only play like half of their deck. Like, do what half of their deck wants to do under this, and that's already worth it. Like, one card in your opponent can only do like half of what their ceiling is, and then all you need is usually one more interruption, and like that's it. That's like all you need. Like, I'll 100%, I'm taking that all day. And of course, their pendulum deck that has like an in-archetype Baylink, so you're protecting your scales, you're protecting your stuff like your floodgates. Like Path with Providence Engrave, and this card is also combined into a Rhoda that's like better than Rhoda. It searches any Zephyr card, not just Zephyr monster. So the deck has some insane tools. If you think pendulums are kind of cool, but you don't really like the combo aspect of it, I highly, highly, highly recommend this deck. This is a really cool combination of control and pendulum at the same time. It feels it. It has really cool plays, and once you learn to play it, it feels pretty rewarding to like play it correctly, I think. So Zephrys, definitely number 1 for me. But going back through this real quick, we have Zephrys at number 1. We've got Evil Twins or Live Twins at number 2. We've got Magistus at number 3. Cannot wait for that synchro. We've got Trap Tricks, probably just been floating around, like a few players play it, and probably more should. This deck's not half bad at all. And of course, number 5, you have the Facecard deck. This one just so cool. I'm happy that it's better than I thought it was originally, but very cool nonetheless. So that is going to do it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, stay tuned for more videos like this one. I might do like maybe some mid-range decks, top 5 underrated. Might do going second decks, top 5 underrated decks. We'll see where I feel about it going forward. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me in the future, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.